Welcome to Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm Greg Bluestein. I moderated a gubernatorial forum this week in Atlanta featuring the top Democratic candidates vying to become Georgia's next governor. There might not have been any moment that instantly reshapes the race, but that doesn't mean it wasn't revealing. In some ways, what stood out most at the Leadership Atlanta Forum was how much it reinforced the central themes that we're already seeing taking shape. Democrats remain tightly aligned around healthcare, Medicaid expansion, and direct confrontation and opposition to President Donald Trump. But perhaps most importantly, the race still feels like it's in the introduction phase, even though the primary is May 19th. Candidates are spending as much time explaining who they are as what they would do. It isn't terribly surprising in a race with so many undecided voters. Most polls show between 30 and 40% of likely Democratic voters are still up in the air. So today we're going to walk through what this forum told us about where the campaign stands right now and what it suggests about the contrasts still to come. Okay, first, this remains very much a kitchen table race. We've all heard about affordability being one of the main themes of this campaign cycle. Well, that was very much the case. Even at a high-level leadership forum, candidates kept returning to the issues voters feel most directly: taxes, household costs, affordability. And there was one lone Republican at the forum, Clark Dean, and Democratic former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. Let's listen to both of them talk about this issue.
We absolutely can reduce taxes, possibly reducing income tax down to zero and certainly capping property taxes. But you cannot do it unless you address the cost. You can't do it responsibly. And that's what this Georgia operational framework is all about, is significantly reducing the cost of government. When I say significant, I'm talking about 25 to 32% improvement in cost structure. That can make a big difference.
Anybody who walks into a room like this or jumps on your TV and says it makes sense to eliminate the state income tax or to eliminate property tax is being reckless with the state. We would go to junk bond status the second the ink dried on that piece of paper when the governor signed it.
Republicans still see tax relief as the safest terrain, and Clark Dean's not alone. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, billionaire Rick Jackson, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Attorney General Chris Carr, none of them were on the stage, but all of them also talk about tax relief and ways to cut government spending. Jeff Duncan is among the Democrats who say promises to eliminate the income tax are foolish pandering, since it's going to require other cuts and new fees to make up for the $16 billion or so in lost revenue. Okay, second takeaway. Democrats are unified on lots of big policy pillars. Democrats, they're remarkably aligned on a lot of the foundational cornerstones of the Democratic argument: healthcare, Medicaid expansion, tackling maternal mortality rates. They keep surfacing as main themes. Let's hear from former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and former State Senator Jason Estevez.
There are two top priorities that have to be addressed. One is the expansion of Medicaid. Even before the big ugly bill, we left $700 million on the table. 9 rural hospitals closed in this state. The first of the year, many small business owners saw their premiums skyrocket because we didn't extend ACA credits. That has to be addressed.
My top priority is health, wealth, and opportunity. So I would ensure that we are expanding Medicaid and ending the maternal mortality crisis.
Democrats clearly think healthcare is one of their strongest contrasts with Republicans, and that's nothing new. We've seen this debate play out for the last dozen or so years, with Democrats calling for Medicaid expansion while Republicans have almost uniformly opposed it, even though more and more rank-and-file Republicans are coming around to that idea. Rural hospital closures are also a politically resonant, Georgia-specific issue. Democrats, they're not really fighting over what to run on, but they are competing over who is best positioned to carry that message and potentially work with Republicans to achieve their goals. Third takeaway, and maybe the most telling, Donald Trump is still at the very center of this race. Whether the candidates are defining themselves in opposition to him or warning about another year of his administration, what that could mean for Georgia, he remains the sort of dominant reference point. Here's Jeff Duncan, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Jason Estevez on that.
In the heat of the moment, post-2020, when Donald Trump's tweeting at us, we're getting death threats, we got state troopers wrapped around our house, our kids can't go to school, my wife's friends won't talk. It was a tough time to be a Duncan. One of my sons, in fact, the one sitting here today, took that coaster and put it down on my desk and said, "Dad, doing the right thing will never be the wrong thing. I'm proud of you." Doing the right thing was standing up to Donald Trump.
The reality is that with this guy in the White House, we don't know what's going to be on the table or off the table by January of next year.
So as governor, I'm going to make sure that I speak up and fight the Trump administration in its efforts to divide and to drive fear in our immigrant communities. I'm going to sue the hell out of the Trump administration to stop them from doing things like building the detention center in Social Circle, which would be an injustice to that small town. But I'm also going to make sure that we pass legislation to keep our families across this state safe.
And man, what a contrast that is with the Republican candidates for governor. Rick Jackson saying he's going to be Trump's favorite governor if he wins. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones has Trump's endorsement. And we got a reminder just the other day that J.D. Vance, the vice president, also backs Burt Jones. Even, more traditional Republicans like Attorney General Chris Carr and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who have had their scraps with the president over the years, they're saying they would be loyalists and fighters for his agenda in Georgia if they were elected to the state's top office. The fourth takeaway, this race still feels like it's in the introduction phase. That's maybe because there's so many undecided voters, maybe because a lot of the Democratic arguments are being swallowed up by the big money slugfest between Rick Jackson, who's already spent $50 million just on TV ads in the race, and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who's pumped in about $20 or so million into the race as well. Candidates on the Democratic side, they're still telling voters who they are. Also, Clark Dean. He's trying to not to be and also ran on the GOP side. Witness this from Clark Dean and Michael Thurmond.
Now, I'm not a politician. For 30 years, I've been building businesses and serving the community with so many people right here in this room, delivering leadership and results that actually matter.
I'm not the tallest. I'm not the most beautiful. I'm not the most apologetic. And I damn sure ain't no Republican.
Michael Thurmond bringing the house down at the Leadership Atlanta Forum. So no, it didn't produce the sort of viral moment that instantly changes a race. It did offer a very clear snapshot of where things stand, at least on the Democratic side. The real collision course, though, is still ahead. Okay, coming up next, my sit-down interview with Gabe Sterling, who's now running for Secretary of State, about the politics of election administration and what kind of Republican he thinks Georgia voters are looking for right now. This is Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Welcome back to Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm Greg Bluestein. Our guest today is Gabe Sterling, who is one of the state's top elections officials, and he became one of the most recognizable Republican defenders of Georgia's 2020 election results. Now he's asking Republican primary voters to elect him to the state's top elections post at a moment when distrust in the voting system still animates much of the party's base. So the central question here is simple. Can a Republican who openly fought election conspiracy theories win a Republican primary in Georgia? Gabe Sterling joins us now. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I think it's an easy answer to that. It's already been done by several people in 2022. So I think we already answered that question one time. We've got to see if it keeps up.
Yeah, and you're referring, of course, to your old boss, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Governor Brian Kemp, and others who defended the state's election system and pushed back on Donald Trump's attempts to overturn his 2020 defeat. You were right in the middle of that. Why stay in this fight in an even more visible way? Because you went through a tough time in 2020, I'm sure, with death threats and the like that targeted you and your boss, Secretary of State Raffensperger.
Look, wild horses couldn't drag me away from this fight. I mean, we've built one of the best voting systems in America. And when we passed the Election Integrity Act in 2021, which was written essentially in Secretary Raffensperger's office with me in the room, who came after us? Stacey Abrams, Joe Biden, and the entire woke world said, this is a terrible law. It's Jim Crow 2.0. We're going to take away your all-star game. They didn't do that because they thought our law was too liberal or too weak. They thought our conservative election law was too strong. And we've won in court repeatedly. I'm the only candidate who can say that.
Was there a specific moment when you decided that Brad Raffensperger's successor should come from within his office?
It wasn't like a specific moment. But if you look at anybody else that's running, I mean, we've been sued from the left and we've been sued from the, irresponsible right about this. And I'm the only one articulating how the system actually works, the one who's telling the truth to the voters and doing the right thing for them, by having a system that's very easy for them to use. And in 2024, it was a great election. It was the most secure, most transparent. We had 99% almost, everybody said that it was easy to vote. 90.5% of conservatives said they trusted the outcome. 0% of African Americans had issues voting. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll give my opponents that 10% of the conservatives who didn't trust the outcome. I'll take the other 90%, and I think I should be okay.
So let's talk about your candidacy beyond 2020, because a lot of voters know you from one moment. That's the pushback against election denialism. They might also know you for your recipes on Twitter. What's the broader case, though, beyond recipes and beyond denialism, you're making to Republican primary voters?
Listen, I've had 40 years of fighting for conservative values in this state. I've done more to fight Fulton County than anybody else running this campaign. I ran a campaign to recall the Fulton County Commission Chairman Michael Lomax in 1990. I helped lead the effort to make Sandy Springs a city and break away from Fulton. I was the one who helped direct the campaigns for Johns Creek and Milton to become cities. I've got a record of conservative success, and I'm the only candidate who has that in this race. And again, Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams have come after me and the secretary over and over again because of our strong election integrity laws. And we've won in court every single time. If you want somebody who knows how to run a good election and defend it from, the liberals who want to basically open the doors up to everybody, then I'm your candidate. I'm the only candidate who's done it, who's defended our system and the law repeatedly and won.
What do you say to Republican voters who still believe the 2020 election was stolen? I know you've been getting some of those questions out on the campaign trail. What do you say to those activists who think you're a traitor to the party?
Listen, I'm about truth, and I'm about efficiency. I'm about real life. I mean, it used to be Rush Limbaugh said he was mayor of Reelsville, and the reality was the president lost by 11,779 votes. There's several reasons why. If you look at the political science of it, it's actually not crazy. I mean, Stacey Abrams, as flawed as she was, came within 50,000 votes of knocking off Brian Kemp 2 years earlier. So it's not that hard of a case to make and have people understand. The issue you have is people have been lied to over and over and over again. But 2020 is not what we care about anymore. We care about the future. 2024 is a great election. We need to build on it for 2026. We have real issues now that have been created by, irresponsible legislative decisions. And we have to be prepared for that for 2026. I'm not in office yet, but I mean, we all see it coming down. It's because of people having to do, quote unquote, something, even though our system is very secure and it's been defended in the lawsuits and the outcomes have been proven over and over again.
Okay, since you mentioned, in your words, irresponsible legislative decisions, let's get into that, because right now we're at this weird impasse after the session ended without any update to Georgia's law, and there's a July mandate to start moving towards hand-marked paper ballots. What should happen? What should lawmakers do? What should Governor Kemp do? Should there be a special session? Because, of course, if you win, it'll be up to you and your colleagues in the Secretary of State's office to continue overseeing and implementing this system.
Well, the reality is they're talking about changing a system for this November, which is literally insane. You can't train people enough. You're asking for problems. You're asking for issues. You're going to create all the stuff you say you're trying to fight. So the reality is we should responsibly do this over the next few years. If they want to have another commission, we had a big commission that kind of helped make the legislative decisions on moving to the ballot marking device. The ballot marking device has a lot of great advantages, and it is easy to use, and it also provides very quick outcomes. If you remember correctly, now we have, because of SB 189, I specifically put in the law, because you can ask people in the room, let's just make them report early and absentee by 8 o'clock. I think he will likely have to call a session because we don't want the courts to do this. But the reality is, in all the other lawsuits from the past, Stacey Abrams, her relief that she consistently asked for was hand-marked paper ballots. So I find it ironic that I see many of my quote-unquote conservative MAGA Republicans wanting hand-marked paper ballots because those are the most easy manipulatable pieces of paper in the world. If you give it to somebody in the back room, if they put an extra mark, at that point, you can overvote, and then that vote's gone. It's just gone forever. There's no way to ever know what happened to it. In our electronic system, we can see if anything's happened. We can take machines out of service. I mean, we have a path, and the Secretary's office has outlined this. We can use our optical character recognition to read all the ballots and the written section on there and not the QR code. All the QR code is fine. What I find hysterical is that all these people who think the names in the QR code, it's not. You know what it is? It is the positions of what it would be if it was a hand-marked paper ballot. All of this is coordinates. All these machines are reading ones and zeros. It just depends on which ones and zeros you're looking at. There's no magic to this, and they're trying to make it seem like there is. And they're confusing people, and they're scaring people. And I've said this before, voter fraud and voter suppression are two false sides of the same coin used to scare voters and raise money. We've got a great system in our state, and I want to go on and defend it and move on to the next system, which will the contract for what we have runs out in 2029.
Yeah.
We were on a path anyway.
Yeah. Quick follow-up. You do think there should be a special session. What should happen? Should they just kick the can a year down the road to give lawmakers more time to assess what should be done next, and whoever the successor is to Raffensperger, you're hoping it's you, obviously, has time to implement it?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, I'm not a legislator. That'll be up to them, but they have not been able to do it so far. I mean, one of my opponents was in the legislature, and he failed to get anything done. You saw the state Senate kind of fail to do that. The House did just want to kick the can. There is a path that we can go to what the intent of SB 189 was, which was to get rid of the QR code by using the optical character recognition. And yes, I'm deep in the weeds. I am an elections geek, okay? That's what this comes down to. I understand how this all works and how to make it work well for both the county officials and for our voters, and people have faith in the outcomes. There's ways to do this. But there's only so many vendors in America. And yes, I know 70% they say use hand marked paper ballots. Doesn't make it any more secure. And this is the exact same thing that people who sued us, like Stacey Abrams and Fair Fight, have wanted to do, is to move to hand marked paper ballots, get rid of citizenship checks, get rid of our list maintenance. We can't allow for that. And if we have some of my opponents want to do over the top, basically extra legal things, which will get us to court, and then we'll have Obama appointed judges writing our election laws and not our legislators.
So as an elections geek, what keeps you up at night? What is the biggest vulnerability you see right now in Georgia's election system beyond the conspiracy theories and the infighting you see in the Republican Party and under the Gold Dome? What is an actual legit concern you have?
The actual legit concern I have is going to be the misinformation, disinformation. But one of the things we saw in the 2024 elections is there were some last minute bomb scares or attempts to do scary things with bombs. And what I'm now thinking about, and this comes out of some of this war with Ukraine and the Iranians, I've talked with the FBI about this and some people at Homeland Security, somebody taking a drone and putting a pipe bomb on top of a voting location. And we don't know they do it. And they call us at 8 a.m., say it's on one of these places. It was to shut those things down. Finding ways to try to scare people and disrupt the actual voting. Now, one of the great defenses against that is all of our early voting. About 60% normally vote in November election early. 60 to 65 is early and absentee. That's one great defense against it. But specific things used to frighten people and try to drive down turnout at specific areas, because one of the things that happened was of the 10 locations in 22, 8 of them were Republican. In 24, there were more Democrat. And it's people trying to use these low-tech ways. I mean, a drone and a pipe bomb is not that hard, unfortunately. And that's the kind of thing that really keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you started talking about it. So thanks for keeping me up at night as well.
You asked a question, you got a real answer, man. Remember, I'm the old Rush Limbaugh mayor of Reelsville.
So it's not just elections, of course, the Secretary of State's office oversees. How different would a Sterling office be from Brad Raffensperger's office, or do you intend to sort of maintain the status quo there?
Well, it's not a status quo. But one of the ethoses that I had when I was a chief operating officer and chief financial officer was we are always going to be improving. We're always going to be measuring, and we're going to see how can we service better. Licensing, for instance, is one of the big things. We have over 600,000 licenses that we either issue or renew every other year. It's usually on a 2-year cycle for most people. And when we got there, it was a mess. But that's not Governor Kemp's fault, Secretary Kemp's fault. It's 100-year-old laws with 50-year-old rules and 30-year-old electronic systems. And so we started trying to change some of that. And we implemented a new system called Goals, which is the Georgia online application licensing service. And as an example, for nurses, when we got there, it was about 100 days to get a new nurse. Through our regular changes before we did that, we got it down to about 48 days. Now we got it down to 10 days. And now the team came back to us and said, hey, we can do better. Now we got it down to 6 days. And the renewal was 4 days. Now it's down to about a minute. But one of the things that I always tell people about is, let's take another thing, a system I built out, Jarvis, the Georgia Registered Voter Information System, which was named after the Marvel movie. They're data geeks who did this, so that's why we let them do it. Somebody asked me, when are you be done with it? I said, never. We will never be done with it because it is an iterative system. We're going to work with the counties and work with voters every year, every cycle, measure what can we do better. And they're making changes all the time to make it better and make it more usable for the counties to do a lot of the work. And it's deep weed kind of stuff. Like we now have rules on how you have to name streets sections so that we don't have a problem with, Brandon Circle versus Brandon CIRCLE or CIR or CIR period, which when we're doing that data management stuff was a problem. So we've now cleaned a lot of that up. We've done a lot of the data management. And since we came into office, people don't understand this. We have either amended, corrected, or canceled 4.4 million voter records. So for all those people out there wondering about, how clean are our lists, Georgia has the cleanest voter lists in America. We'd love to make them cleaner, except for the National Voter Registration Act, a federal law, which no Republican has made a move on, doesn't allow us, even if we know somebody's not there, we cannot cancel them. We can start the process of putting them to inactive, but we cannot just remove them from the list. That would violate federal law. So we have a lot of those kind of things. And we've seen those videos people post, like all these thousands of people. It's not real. I mean, it's this phantom thing because of this antiquated federal law from the 1990s.
Well, one last question for Gabriel Sterling, the self-proclaimed elections geek running to oversee our election system in Georgia. How would you interact with the state election board, which of course is a separate entity? It's very confusing. Separate entity run by, we've talked about a lot on the show, run by the pro-Trump pit bulls, as the president called them, who have somewhat of a different agenda than Raffensperger right now, and I would assume would have a different agenda than you would if you were elected.
Well, I mean, it depends on who's going to be on the board. I mean, everybody has terms, and I would try to do my best to work with them. And their goal is to get the rules within the law. The Supreme Court basically slapped them back last time because they were going beyond the law. They've also violated the open records laws and cost taxpayers $50,000 because they didn't want to give up text messages. This particular board has been problematic, but we have to go in with an open hand and say, we will work with you because we all want to have good. Everybody wants clean, fair elections and transparent ones. They're easily auditable. That's what we all want. It's a question of how we achieve that. And I think there's been some more combativeness sometimes. But the reality is we have the investigators. We can do this stuff. We can work together. But they're so hell-bent for a policy outcome. I said, you know what? If you want a policy outcome, run for the legislature. That is not the job of a state election board.
Gotcha. Gabriel Sterling, thank you so much for joining Politically Georgia. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. If anyone wants to learn more, then go to GabrielSterling.com.
And thank you for listening to Politically Georgia. If you have a question you'd like to ask us here on the podcast, of course, you can always call our call-in hotline anytime, day or night. Leave a question and we'll play it back and answer it right here on the show during our Monday mailbag segment. The number is 770-810-5297. You can also email us at politicallygeorgia@ajc.com. Shaney B., our producer, he gets lonely sometimes. So if you email him, it will brighten up his day. Send him all your questions. That's going to do it for today's edition of Politically Georgia. Please follow, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform and share Politically Georgia with a friend. We'll talk to you next time on the Politically Georgia podcast from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Thanks for listening to the Politically Georgia podcast. Our executive producer is Shane Backler. AJC's head of audio is Sam Stamler. Production support from our partners at Goat Rodeo, including Kara Schillen, Hazel Hoffman, and Max Johnston. For more of our political coverage, visit ajc.com/politicallygeorgia, and we invite you to support local journalism by subscribing to the AJC. Join us again next time on Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.